Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, and it is our Business of Games show. This is our 43rd episode of Let's Do Lunch after taking a little break last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for our first ever virtual conference. We had LA Games conference over 3 days last week, and we are not missing a step here today with a fantastic conversation. We'll have David Bloom, contributor at Forbes, back on with us in just a minute, and joining David is John Linden, who has been in and around the game industry for a long time. He is now CEO of Mythical Games, and David and John are going to be talking about building player-owned economies, a very cool topic, one that speaks to, I think, a lot of people who will be on the call today. David, come on.
All right, how you going? And let's get John on it. There we go. There we go, John. So we are going to talk today about, to begin with, Blankos, which is one of the things that you guys are getting involved in with Mythical Games. And I love the look of this stuff. And we were talking right before we came on about some of the artists and others that are involved in this. But let's start out with what Mythical's got its hands in and how it manifests with things like these really cool Mexican wrestler head, and the other ones look like the Residents out of the longtime completely weirdo band out of San Francisco that has never been identified as humans. So between the Residents and Mexican wrestling, we have got like some pretty out there pop culture references already. It's beyond blanks. Yeah. So talk about this, John.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad it's the 43rd episode. That's amazing. So again, thank you, and thank you for everybody that's attending right now. Really happy, like I said, to be here and talk kind of what we're up to and just really talk in general where we see the industry going. Blankos is a game that we're putting out on top of a platform that we've been building for a couple years now. So what we do at Mythical Games, we've been longtime game developers. We've built, our team has built, I think, some of the most, kind of big games in the industry, honestly, but from Call of Duty to Skylanders to DJ Hero to some of the Telltale games. Like it's really been awesome to kind of pull together this team to do something new in the industry. And our focus is very much based on our focus is very much based on kind of shifting the game economies. And what we see is that there's a lot of new stakeholders now in gaming. It's no longer just kind of consumers working with a game developer, with a publisher, right? There's all these new stakeholders now because people are becoming kind of more immersed in these big worlds. So what we're really focused on in Mythical is bringing those stakeholders into the game economy itself, letting them contribute, letting them participate, and letting them, frankly, profit from it down the road. So we're very excited about that. Blankos is our first game that we're going to be putting out. There'll be a lot more information. Actually, IGN just announced yesterday they're going to be dropping a brand new trailer on the 5th. So definitely take a look at it's the first day of the IGN Summer Gaming Festival, or Summer of Gaming. Sorry,
Summer of Games. Yeah.
Summer of Games.
They're doing some good stuff.
And so we're going to be on the first day. Yeah, dropping a brand new trailer that shows a lot of gameplay of what we're up to. So Blankos is our version, though, using this technology and letting people come in, working with actual vinyl toy creators and all that, kind of building out this sandbox world to where it's kind of this MMO sandbox world where players can build, players can play, players can collect, and really contribute in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think that's some really fascinating stuff. But I mean, it's interesting to talk about how we create an economy in a virtual space and what that economy looks like. Yeah. You said you guys have been commissioning some of the Kid Robot creators, the vinyl toy creators, the collectible toy creators, and some of the street artists that are out there. And I do a little Tumblr blog on street art because I'm just a geek about street art. You've got in your backdrop of your home back there, you've got some street art on the walls and a Kong thing, and I mean, clearly you're geeked out about this, despite being a Jayhawk. And we all have burdens to bear.
We're not supposed to like each other, right? I mean, we did go to rival schools here. We're not supposed to like each other.
We'll see like back in the 1850s, we used to shoot each other. So this is actually progress. Now we're using Blankos. We're using Blankos instead of actual live rounds. It's a win. So let's talk though about how you structure an economy. Yeah. I think one of the things that's important to talk about, you all, there's been lots and lots of conversation about blockchain and Bitcoin and virtual currencies, and you are using blockchain, but not getting into the currency business. Right. You're still doing things in dollars. So talk about that component and how that undergirds what you're doing.
I'll try and keep it high level. I'll get a little geeky here as well. So if you think about blockchain, there's some really fascinating concepts in the technical stack, right? There's kind of two sides that we've seen over blockchain over the last few years. There's the we're going to get rich on cryptocurrencies, right? And all this, new token economies that people are going to participate in, and private keys and all that. Honestly, to be real honest, we're not really focused as much on that right now. We're really focused heavily on the technology itself. And what that technology does is you can start having this decentralized distributed node network over time that is very immutable, right? So you can record, you can play back history and really show exactly how the transactions happened and have that authenticity around those transactions. So we really started off saying, that's a really interesting base piece of technology if we want to bring ownership, if we want to bring all these stakeholders that are actually partaking in this economy. So we really built everything around blockchain. Now to be very specific, to be and upfront, at the very beginning, it's really going to be all focused around real money transactions, right? So you're going to be working in US dollars or in euros or in whatever pounds, that type of thing.
Just to clarify though, you just said fighting words in the Bitcoin virtual currency or real money, right? It's like, they'll just go right at you on that one, brother.
Yeah.
Particularly now when no one wants to use actual dollars to exchange hands. I don't want to give you a piece of a bill, right? I'll send you a Venmo or something.
Yep.
But you're using real dollar. You're using traditional currencies.
Yeah. And to be real honest, we can do both. We do have ways to put it into cryptocurrencies and trading those as well. But I think what we're seeing right now is that it's just really confusing for consumers. And there's a lot to what we're doing, right? There's a lot of, anytime you have big cultural shifts in kind of how transactions or how money can flow or how money's divided, it's usually best to make sure consumers aren't confused by that, right? Make it very easy. Give them new functionality in ways they already interact, in ways they already transact with other players or they transact back with the game. And that's been really important for where we're heading. So we really want to focus initially on using that tech, but really making sure players can understand it. Because I think what you're going to see is if you keep it completely in the cryptocurrencies and all that, and there's some really, really amazing stuff you can do, you're playing in a very niche audience. And that's just not something we wanted to do. We wanted to really bring this type of solution to the masses, right? Bring it out so millions of people can play and millions of people can benefit from these functionality rather than going so revolutionary that we're playing in this small group of people that understand it. That makes sense?
Right. Yeah. It absolutely makes sense. I mean, particularly when you are asking people to not only play, but create businesses, you kind of want to, you don't need them to reinvent the wheel and understand the entire universe to be able to do the things that they do and do well. I mean, you want to be able to make sort of abstract some of that so it's a little bit more accessible to them so they can get to the business of doing the cool stuff, whether it's playing or creating or both. So that's part of it. But I mean, I think the thing that I've always found fascinating about what blockchain does is that it reimposes the notion of scarcity in a virtual digital space. That all of a sudden you can have this guy, Mr. Resident Head here, or Ms. Mexican wrestler. They're unique, and this particular one that you have is yours or created by you, and we can track it. Now, the other thing that we talked about yesterday in our call was how you'll use blockchain tools to give the creator value even as that thing changes hands. And that's really different to me. Because it's like if I was a painter and I sell my painting, I'm Van Gogh, and I sell my painting for $20 or whatever when I'm the only one I sell when I'm alive, and now it's going for 50 million. All of a sudden I can get a piece of that, or my descendants can get a piece of that 50 million, not just the $20 I got in 1878. So talk about how that works.
Yeah. So honestly, this has been one of the fascinating things about this whole blockchain space and kind of the way we've been thinking about it, and the concept of player-owned economies is it's gotten me fired up like early internet days, to where like one thing builds, you're like, oh my God, if I do that, I can do this. If I do this, then I can stack this on top. If I do this, and we haven't had that, I don't think, for a while, to be real honest, especially in games. I think it's been kind of like, more advanced mechanics and things like that, but not fundamental shifts. And so what we're looking at right now is when you have the concept of ownership to where players can own an asset and they have the ability to sell that asset to somebody else. That then immediately turns into a dual economy, right? You have a primary marketplace, just like you have in other games. You can buy in a PC, you can buy on Apple or Google, you can buy on the consoles. That's kind of the primary marketplace. But now you have a secondary economy as well. And now you have the ability to say, okay, I bought this for 10 and I'm going to sell it for 25, right? And what blockchain does is we can track that no matter where that transaction happens, whether it happens in the game or it happens outside of the game. We can now track that transaction, and we can take a small transaction fee out of that sale. So when we do that, by giving that power back to consumers, you're letting now the economy take over to whatever the consumers think it is, right? So I think this item's worth $1,000 to me, I'll pay it. Somebody else might be like, well, I'm not going to pay that. I'll pay $500, or I'll pay $50, or I'll pay $2, right? It really becomes kind of a free economy built by the consumers. And with our tech, we can now take that transaction fee, no matter where it sells for or how much it sells for. So once you have that now you have the ownership, you have a dual economy, and you have the ability to transact no matter where you want to transact as a consumer. Once you have those, now you can start rewarding the original creators. And that is a part we're so excited about. Whether you're a vinyl toy artist and you're working with us to bring an item in the game, you're a streamer that makes a living on Twitch and you want to bring special items to your followers, or you're a retail brand that want to play and let people play in your world or a version of your world, it now allows them to actually have a true residual on every single transaction. Now we're talking, these things stack up and you have a shift in the gaming economy, which we're excited about.
Absolutely. This is interesting because this has been a really essential, I think, conflict within the game space for a good 20 years. Brock Pierce, whom I've known for a very long time, is very big in the Bitcoin universe and the chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation and a bunch of big investor and all that. Back in the day, he was partnered with, of all people, Steve Bannon, in a gold farming operation in China, where they were paying people to play games and then harvest stuff, and then they would resell them. There was a secondary market that they created. But then that all got kind of shut down because there was a realization that, hey, there's value here, and the publishers are like, we're not going to let that happen without us controlling the value. But what you're saying is we want to unlock that. We'll still make some money, but the artists will make some money. The owners, if there's an appreciation of the asset, they'll make money, and it'll get bigger, right? That's the idea. All of a sudden, you're changing that dynamic and opening it up.
And we've gotten this question a few times because we raised a good chunk of venture capital when we first started this company, and they're like, how did you guys raise so much? And really, it's kind of like, to me, it was a pretty straightforward formula. It's like, let's take a team that have built billions of dollars of video games and put them together. And then we're going to do something in the industry in a way that consumers can understand it to now increase the total addressable market of an already expanding marketplace in the hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So that's where it gets really, really exciting. I think where this technology goes is that I think we're talking about, I think the transaction volume that players can create between each other over time could rival what we're seeing in the entire industry right now. And suddenly you have a massive expansion of the overall gaming industry. So that's where we get very, I think that's where we're heading towards, and that's where the industry is kind of quickly going towards. What's happened in the past, though, are these gray markets, right? And there's a lot of war stories about it. We're not the first to try, or we're not the first. The consumers have figured out ways to do this in the past. There's a couple problems with that, though. One is regulation, right? So I'll use loot boxes as an example. If I basically have a concept of letting someone buy a loot box for cash, get a random chance item, and sell that for cash, basically I'm violating gambling laws in every country in the world, right? So you got to be very careful on how you design these economies that it doesn't become a gambling type scenario, right? So that's kind of the first area is regulation. The second area is that a lot of games aren't built to kind of bypass the loops in the game. And that's what's happened a lot of times. That's what happened with Diablo, right? They had a real money transaction, and they even put it out themselves. And you talk to Rob Pardo, who's investor and works with, we talked to him a lot. If you look at that, what happens is that they built a game to have a certain loop. And what happens is when you introduce the real money auction, you could jump up here suddenly, but the game is still kind of operating down here. And it just kind of destroyed the experience for everybody, right? So you have to—
Right, because you could buy your way. You could basically buy your way to greatness. You'd have that crown of killing everybody or whatever it was.
And it's not necessarily buying your way there, right? You want to avoid kind of the pay to win. You want to really focus a little bit more on that vanity kind of concept of peacocking. Look what I have, which is what a lot of games do now. But it's really kind of these three things. It's regulation, it's making sure the game's designed that way. And the third one is frankly that these third-party markets that would pop up, they're very unsafe, right? You don't know if you're spending money, you're actually going to get anything in return. So there's a lot of consumer fraud and things like that. And what we're basically doing with our tech is we're kind of eliminating all those. We're putting them in there above board,
right.
you know, legitimate, and making sure that the game designs work with that mechanism.
You know, this is a really interesting time because we see, as you mentioned, Fortnite, for instance, has become a $1 billion franchise by selling skins and season passes, and much of it is about, as the researchers have talked about in some of the papers I've seen, a lot of this is about allowing self-expression, that you can be your actual self. You can express it in lots of ways, whether it's wearing an NFL jersey in Fortnite or a John Wick shirt or some crazy other thing that shows up, and now you're turning that off, that spigot even wider open, but having a legitimate way to connect it. Now, Blankos then is really where you're starting, but it certainly doesn't sound like where you're ending this. Roblox, whose chief product officer was interviewed on here a few weeks ago, talked about what they do, and he said, you know, they're writing checks up to $1 million for some of their creators. Is that sort of the model that you all are hoping to go toward in terms of turning loose your people?
A little bit. So there's kind of two main differences I'd say right now. One is that we wanted the ability to build to really be focused on the players building rather than developers. You know, and Roblox, if you look at the top games, you look at all that, they're actually built by developers. And in fact, they're now developers getting funded by venture capitalists to go build on Roblox, and that's cool.
Okay.
But that's different, you know. So what we're really
that is a platform, though. Just to clarify, that's a game platform
Absolutely.
too. What you're talking about, a game platform, and they're a game platform. Right?
That's right. So they're a game platform that's more focused on the content creations, more focused around developers, and very, you know, there's scripting involved. There's a lot of understanding of how that platform works to be successful, and that's awesome. And like I said, they're doing an amazing job. What we want to do is do something different. We're not trying to copy Roblox. We're trying to basically bring out a new type of game to where it's literally more about the players, right? So players can kind of get more involved. They can build up if they want to build a shooter in a game, they can do that. If they want to build a race game, they can do that. So it's really focused more on players to pick up the controller and just start building, and you could have a full game built, right? There's no scripting, there's no coding, there's none of that right now. So that's kind of a key difference in what we're doing on the platform. And then what we aren't doing right now is we're not introducing the concept of full UGC quite yet. So what I mean by that are players can basically build using assets. They can mix things together. They can do all types of new pieces to kind of create, but they're not necessarily bringing a brand new design in the game. And maybe we could eventually introduce that. We're really focused right now on those artists, right? And there's a couple things right now to do that. One, if you look at the world of artists, you look at the world of retail, you look at the retail brands, you look at the world of influencers and esports teams and all that, you're talking thousands, if not tens of thousands of content creators right there. So we're starting off on really making sure we empower that group first before we go full UGC to any player can kind of build and grow, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
I want to take I want to take a minute here to make sure, introduce yourselves in chat. And if you want to ask John a question, we have a Q&A section as a whole separate window. Put those over there so my little brain can keep track of them, but ask some questions and I'll work them into our conversation. We also have a poll coming up in about 10 minutes, and I strongly urge you all to chime in on that. We're going to be using that as an opportunity to have some additional conversation around some of these big issues. John, I wanted to ask about we talked a little bit about how things like concerts are showing up in Minecraft and in Fortnite. Fortnite has this Party Royale. We have movie trailers now being shown. How do you see Blankos and really some of these other metaverse style companies or game platforms becoming more than games? Where do you see that all going, and how are you building that component of things into Blankos and the rest of what you're doing?
Yeah, no, I think that's that's a great question. So I think there are this kind of concept of metaverses out there, and to me, metaverses are a little bit different. I don't think there's going to be one game that rules all. Fortnite obviously is huge and has hundreds of millions of players, but even then, I think it's a very 350 million. There you go. So I mean, it's a massive game, but again, I think there's going to end up being a lot of different metaverses, right? And it's just, to me, metaverse basically means it's a place that you can contribute, right? It's a place that you could possibly even make money and be partake in that financial transaction over time. It's a place where, you know, people can kind of go whatever direction they want to go. What we've done with Blankos is we really built it very specifically to be a brand safe world, right? There is shooting in the game, but there's no death, right? There's no blood and guts in our game. It's really built, and we think the world of toys is a fantastic place to kind of introduce these concepts, because everybody loves kind of toys, right? And it's a very stylized but different, funky little world, right? And I think that's a great basis to start doing a lot of these experiments. You know, how do brands interact in that world? I don't want to just slap logos on shirts, right? That's not super exciting. But how do you bring in what a version of a shoe company could be in a toy world, right? That starts getting really fascinating now, and turning over the controls back to those brands, back to those creators, letting, you know, a movie trailer is awesome, but what if you could actually build a racing game for the next Fast and Furious that they have built, they've contributed to, they can connect with these players and actually partake in that transaction value themselves. Those are the exciting things that we think, and we think the world of toys is awesome to do that in. Like I said, Minecraft is going to be doing this as well in certain areas. There's going to be a lot of different kind of metaverses out there. We've kind of chosen one in particular that we think is very safe, very friendly to brands, and really allows us to bring a lot of these player-owned concepts to the world in a controlled but very fun way as well.
Well, now, so you're talking about really still a set of universes. This is like physics. All of a sudden, we've got this whole string theory of alternate universes, all operating with their own sets of creators doing their things and various game expressions of various sorts and brand expressions and all that. One of the things that I'm interested in, you know, the Oasis in Ready Player One, one of the seminal texts about what the metaverse could be. Basically, you're able to pull stuff. You know, you've got your Fortnite Marvel skin over here that you can go play in your Blankos Mexican wrestling match game over there, versus your Roblox racing game over here. Yep. My recollection is you're a little skeptical about that anytime soon.
In terms of the interoperability, I think it's a challenge. I've kind of used this example before, but you know, I was one of the studio heads at Activision on the Call of Duty franchise, and there were 5 studios at the time. I think we had 9 studios, and 5 of them were kind of dedicated to Call of Duty. And there were a couple different lead studios, right? And we'd have 3 different Call of Duty engines and all that we'd rotate through. And we had a hard enough time getting a character out of a Black Ops game into a Modern Warfare game, right? And we owned both those studios. We worked side by side.
And it was the same universe, right? The same company, everything.
Exactly. And it was still really challenging. So I think there's a lot of technical challenges still. I mean, honestly, the demo that's Unreal 5, I think, is definitely starting to go down that path, you know, doing automatic LOD, calculation, all that type of stuff is really, really fascinating. But I still think
I think Unity too, right? Unity's trying to go that same
Absolutely.
direction.
And I think there'll be certain cases of it. I think there's definitely cases within the same developer, you know, moving from one game to another game, you can really learn a lot. You can have verified assets, things like that. You can use it as loyalty programs. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And I do think we'll see some examples of it, but I don't see a world, you know, next year to where it's like, I'm going to take my character from a Call of Duty and I'm going to put him in Fortnite. That's just not going to happen anytime soon. If that makes sense. Like, there's just a lot of reasons. One, technical reasons, but then also just developers aren't gonna want that to come into their world quite yet.
Right.
But eventually, I think it will head that way.
Okay. Well, yeah, years and years and years from now. But now, in the shorter term, we've got a few things out there. The game company you were part of before Mythical Games was called Seismic, and you sold that company. Seismic Games had their hands in actually some surprising stuff. Everything from a Disney ride, Star Wars ride, which is a whole different universe, to games that are more traditional and stuff in between. It was really kind of crazy. But you sold to Niantic, which is best known for Pokemon Go, which has become a multi-billion-dollar franchise in the AR world. I'm sort of curious, as we have things like 5G, which gives us powerful new tools for mobile gaming and augmented reality experiences wherever we are. Where does a company like Niantic go? Where does your company go in terms of mobile spaces and all that? What's coming?
Yeah, I think there's several different answers to that one. One, on the Niantic side, I mean, obviously they are the kings and queens of AR, right? They're definitely dominating AR. They had a demo the other day. I know they've been working on it for a long time in terms of having occlusion technologies off of a basic camera. They're doing a lot of machine learning. Like machine learning tied to computer vision type algorithms, so you can actually identify objects and have the characters interact. So they're going really, really deep in that, and I think they're going to do some amazing stuff. Obviously, actually it would fit with them as well. Yeah, the world of 5G will definitely give a lot more data speed, so you can do a lot more processing and have that communication between the world and the client. But I also think that 5G is going to do some amazing stuff. We have a combination of kind of this massive cloud computing infrastructure now, and the GPU access and being able to do massive simulations in the cloud are amazing. You suddenly now, if you have the data pipe to bring that into a client, I think that's going to get really fascinating to where, I know there's some examples, obviously Google Stadia and all that. They're actually doing all of it, rendering and everything in the cloud, and streaming the video across. I think you're going to see some hybrids of that over time to where, part of it is rendered in the client, but a lot of the simulation and computation is done in the cloud, and 5G will enable that connection to happen. So I think we're going to see some tremendous improvements, but not necessarily just like, oh, I'm going to have better graphics and I can download bigger games, which is what a lot of people go to with 5G. Is like, cool, I can download, gigs of data. Like, I think it's going to be more about having that massive computing power tied to the massive computing power you have in your hand, and having that bridge be blown open to do whatever I want. That's where I think it starts getting really powerful with the promise of 5G.
Okay, so lots of promise. And how far off do you think it is? Because this is going to be one of our poll questions we're going to pull up in a second. I'm sort of curious what your horizons are, because you're a businessman trying to figure out how do we create this cool thing, and what's the universe. You're trying to throw a pass, and they don't really do that very much at Kansas with the football team, but
rock chalk Jayhawk out there for all the KU people.
But you're trying to throw a pass where they're going to be, not where they are.
There you go. Absolutely.
So how does that shape what Blanco's and what your platform is going to look like?
Yeah. So again, I think our decision of kind of getting into the space, and honestly, to be totally honest, Blanco's really started off as a tech demo. We have a kind of a back-end platform that's really our focus as a long-term company. Is we want to, and we haven't released a lot on that yet, but Blanco's is fully running off our own platform. We like that. It's more of an economic platform, right? We're not trying to compete with Unity or Unreal. We're really trying to build an economic layer on top of that to enable these economies to happen. So we are in talks with some other game developers already, some really big game developers that are seeing a similar future that we're talking about, and they want to work with us. So we're kind of heading down that direction. But what we want to do at Blanco's, honestly, is it's kind of that decision of why, there's some people going fully cryptocurrencies because that's going to be the digital wallet. It might be in 5 or 10 years, I think. But right now, the throw in the pass, we wanted somebody to be there to catch that pass, right? So we really are focused on the big platforms. How do you work with the first parties? Some people talk about these walled gardens and, oh my God, the walled gardens, have all these restrictions. They do, but they also have all the consumers. So how do you kind of bring these baby steps to add that functionality and work with the first parties, make it so that so they want to work with you, right? Rather than trying to go around them for now. So those are things we've done, and Blanco's is really built, as I mentioned, to be a mass market game. It's a game we want to get in front of millions of consumers and introduce these concepts. So frankly, we talk about blockchain here. You probably won't hear blockchain ever mentioned in a consumer advertisement, right? We're never going to talk about that. We'll talk about the concept of ownership, but we really only talk about blockchain when people want to talk about the technical aspects. To the consumer, it's just a game that has new functionality, and we really think that there's going to be, we really think that's the right first pass, right? To really connect with a user and let them play in a game that they could play. And honestly, I think a lot of it will be kind of like free-to-play games, to where, in free-to-play game world, 95% of the players never touch the economy, right? They're literally playing it for free. 5% make up all the money. I think the same thing's going to happen initially in this type of world. 95% of people will just play Blanco's to play Blanco's. They won't ever care about the ownership. They won't ever think about it. It's going to be that 5% that suddenly are like trading and speculating and coming up with price predictions and what do these recipes mean and how do I build worlds that can actually make money. But we think that 5% makes the other 95% have a better gaming experience, and that's what's important to us. Yeah.
Well, and I do think something like Fortnite's experience, if you are creating cool stuff and people are taking part in it, I mean, CryptoKitties, we talked about that. Again, that was just, it was it was not much more than a tech demonstration.
Yeah, it was a gamified market. Yeah.
It was a gamified market, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, there's things like that that suggest there's a desire to create and capture and speculate in even collectible stuff that you're able to do in a blockchain universe. Now that being said, I want to bring up the poll, and also we have 3 questions, and we'll get into those. Actually, we have 4. There was one that was sort of in the chat. Ann Toole wanted to know, where is Mythical based? Not Kansas, I'm sure.
Where is we based? We actually are fairly spread out. So this whole the whole work from home has worked out fairly well for us. So we're based in Los Angeles. We have a big office in Seattle. We have some people in San Francisco as well, and then we have a growing office in the Midwest in Kansas City, Missouri.
Actually in Kansas City.
Back end,
right?
Yeah, we actually put an office out there, which is. I thought we were being very original by putting an office out there, and then found out Riot has an office on the other side of Missouri in St. Louis. So I'm like, all right, well, at least we're thinking alike. So we do have a Midwest office as well that's mostly engineers. And then we have a couple people in the UK as well. And the game studio that we're working with to build Blankos is based in the UK as well. It's a former Activision team, and they're definitely like I said. So we have kind of 4 or 5 locations we operate out of, and it's been going very well for us. So
right. And to be clear, you grew up in Overland Park in Kansas City. I grew up in the middle part of the state and went to Mizzou. This is why I tease you about your unfortunate college choices. But we all have burdens to bear. Yours, at least you got a good basketball team.
Yeah.
So you got that. So the audience poll is up. Please take a moment to click on things. What's your favorite metaverse-style game platforms? And I put Blankos in there, even though I should have called it Blankos, not Blockos. I apologize.
Yeah, that's all right.
It was a late night last night.
No worries.
How long before blockchain-based technology? I had block on my head, on my mind. How long before blockchain-based technologies are commonly used across media, gaming, and entertainment? I think this is a really interesting question, and just trying to get an idea what people think. What's the horizon? Just as you're trying to figure it out. Yeah. And finally, in a post-pandemic 5G-fueled Apple Glass, because there's a lot of rumors about their AR wearing world, and it's probably Ming-Chi Kuo and the other analysts who are tracking supply chains and Apple logistics say it's on the way probably next year, tied to these really cool 5G phones that they're going to roll out probably the very end of 2020, depending on what the pandemic continues to do. What's the opportunity for AR-based games such as Pokemon Go and Jurassic World Alive? One of the dirty little secrets that I have, that map virtual game experiences to moving about in the real world in a pandemic. So it's kind of interesting to see all that. So those are the questions I have. And I think, did you throw one? I don't think you did. So those are 3. Just look at those. So you guys are spread out all over the place. Christopher Anjos asks, what are the current challenges, known or unknown, that keep you, the CEO, up at night?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, right now, it's really a lot about the well-being of our employees. We're getting bigger now. We have 50 people at Mythical Games. We have another, 30-something people at our partner development studio. And again, I think the work from home experience has obviously been a very personal thing for everybody. It's a very different experience for each person. We have some people that have been, home and single, and they've been pretty much by themselves for months, So we're very much worried about that. We really want to make sure we give everybody, every opportunity to be as social as we possibly can over Zoom and things like that, Slack. So I think that's honestly one of my biggest ones right now. In terms of long term, I think for us, we're trying to make changes in the industry, right? And that's never easy to do. And I think what really keeps me up all night is making sure we can get all the platforms to come with us. We've had some amazing discussions. I think it definitely helps that a lot of our management team has worked with pretty much all the first parties in some capacity on pretty major games. So there's already kind of a built-in trust level there that we're opening the doors, but we still have to get through the door, right? And we have to make sure we can bring this new economy in a way that we can really maximize exposure to consumers and also adhere to the regulations, right? So I'm very comfortable on the regulation side. I feel like we've spent so much time and so much money on the legal side to make sure we really truly understand how this works and how do we, make sure we steer clear of anything that could cause a problem there. It's more about, we want this to work with all the major platforms and open that door up. And I think that's what we got to make sure we understand. The last one I think that kind of keeps me up at night, honestly, is that we're kind of blending two worlds together, right? There's a whole world of financial markets and financial trading and kind of bringing those concepts into gaming really for the first time in a lot of cases. So there's everything from price prediction to how do consumers react and how is governance done and you know, I mean, what do you know, all these different policies. We're kind of blending these two worlds together. And I think so far we've been very happy with that. But, you know, we got to make sure that one, it financially is works from an economic perspective as easily as it makes sense to consumers. And those aren't necessarily you know, complementary things, right? You have to really kind of work your way around to make it easy for consumers, but regulatory, you know, have the approval of the regulatory markets as well as have the financial economic principles to make it successful. And I think it's a combination of those three things that take a lot of effort to do. And that's kind of what keeps me up at night. I think we're doing a great job, and we'll know more soon as we get this game in the wild, for sure.
Yeah, the regulators will let you know how you're doing.
They'll let us know for sure. And, and honestly, so far we've literally taken to the point we've actually been in communication with all 50 states. And, you know, so far, like I said, we're not done with all of them yet, but, you know, we're getting, you know, they definitely let you know, but we're trying to be as proactive as we can too, because we want to be here for the long haul.
Yeah. Jaron Ray Hines, who's a frequently joins these conversations, asks, is there an engine that creates these in-game assets and characters based on prefabbed objects, which is have you sort of automated some of this process or at least structured some of it to help it make it easier for the creators?
Yeah. I think you lobbed this one for me. Thank you for that. So we actually have a product that does exactly that. So we have a studio tool right now. Right now it's just called the Mythical Studio. We'll have a branded tool later on. We actually work with artists around a lot of this right now. So what I mean by that is that you know, if you start talking to like vinyl toy creators, artists that make kid robot toys for a living, right? They build three-dimensional objects for a living. You give them Photoshop, no problem. You give them Illustrator, no problem. You tell them, hey, you need to get Maya, a 3D editing tool, and they're like,
you're right.
What do I do with this? You know?
Yeah, right, right.
And so what we've done is we really want to make sure that there's a balance of collaboration, right? That the artists, we're not taking someone's concept art and building out those assets ourselves. We want the artist to actually build them. We want the artist to have that love and that expression in their digital assets. So we actually have a tool we're going to be giving out, and brands can get access to this now. Some artists we're working with, all under contract right now, can have access to the tool, and they can literally see all the different pieces, and they can edit to their heart's content. They can spend 15 minutes on a character, or they can spend 15 days on a character. And then it allows that kind of concept to happen. And in fact, we have an open source solution called DGoods, which stands for digital goods. And that kind of encapsulates some of that back and forth. It's going to encapsulate, how do I render an object on a website? How do I render a 3D object out of the game engine on a marketplace, right? So things like that we think are very, very important, because you spend so much time building these worlds and building them to exactly, you know, your style of art and your love of these worlds. You want it to be represented, even if you're taking that character out of the game and putting it on a marketplace or putting it on a website. You want that to still represent and animate the same way and have the right backdrop. So we've done a lot of that work already, and you'll see a lot of that. If you're working with us already for Blankos, you're already seeing some of that access to those tools.
Great. Well, this is somebody trying to get some business done. Craig Amazine says, my business partner is a popular pro athlete and avid gamer streamer with consistent creative engagement and millions of Instagram, TikTok followers. Of course, that begs the question, well, who is this person? But how does he and his sponsors, always handy, fit into your business plan? So how does somebody like that, who's a creator and has a big entourage of paying people behind him, how does that fit into you?
So that's exactly the type of partner we're enabling right now. I mean, to be honest, that's almost picture perfect of what we're working with right now. So we're working with groups like that to basically bring their passion into this game. So whether again, it's not necessarily, we're not trying to create a likeness of that athlete. We're trying to take what is their essence, right? What do they want to promote? Maybe it's a charitable cause, maybe it's a clothing line, maybe it's whatever's important to them, and bring that into the world and bring that so the players can interact with, right? So what we do is we bring that in. We can either help you get that started. We can find an artist to collaborate with you, or if you have a team, it's amazing. A lot of these celebrity teams, they have teams to do a lot of this work. You guys could actually build your own characters or your own assets or whatever in collaboration with us. once you do that, you would get a cut of everything that sells, right? So let's say you put up that character and you sold 10,000 of those characters in the first week, right? So you'll get a cut of those 10,000. But more interestingly is that, yeah, you'll get the money, and that's usually where it stops with the game. If you're working with the game right now, that's where it ends. With our game,
there's no long tail, right?
Yeah,
there's no long tail.
You sold 10,000, and let's say over the next 3 years, those 10,000 each sold 3 times. I sold one to David, David sells one to Ned, Ned sells one back to me, whatever. So each of those characters now have sold 3 times each. And they've now appreciated in value because you can no longer buy those 10,000. You can only buy them from other players. So you're going to get 30,000 additional payments over the next 3 years, automatically tracked by the blockchain, paid out automatically by us. So that's where we get excited about groups like this. So suddenly it becomes, for the game developer, it becomes very powerful because you're getting access to people like your business partner, which is exciting. From the business partner's perspective, it could be a whole new revenue stream. And you can even divide that up. You can say, hey, I'm going to keep part of it. I'm going to give part of it to my charity, and I'm going to give part of it to my agents or my representation. And when it's all tracked automatically. So that's exactly kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, that's great. It reminds me, I just saw something this morning. Nike partnered with Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
Yes.
To make sneakers called not Chunky Monkey, but Chunky Donkey.
Yes.
Which quickly sold out and now are unavailable except maybe if you want to pay $1,700. You might be able to snag a pair. So clearly there's an opportunity for a mashup even between giant brands like Ben and Jerry's, which is still kind of alt, but it's still a big brand, and Nike certainly. And you want to take some of that kind of energy, and the possibilities in this virtual world are really interesting to think about. Peter Headley, who asked a very thoughtful question, I think, particularly given the fact that so many blockchain and Bitcoin people have ended up in Puerto Rico because of the tax opportunities. He has asked, is there any possibility of one of your offices being located in the Caribbean?
Oh man, I would love that, and I'd be the first one to move there, I think. So not currently, but again, like I said, we're really. I think what's really interesting is everybody's kind of evaluating what is the plan now. I think before we were very much like, nah, we want everybody in these couple locations, but now we're starting to get a little bit more distributed. Nothing in the Caribbean yet. Love to be there. I'm a big boat fan myself, so I would definitely enjoy that at some point. I think, to be real honest, I think right now we're focusing more on the U.S. in terms of just making sure the production's there. The UK and the EU next, and then probably APAC. But yeah, if there's a really super talented person, I think we'd definitely love to talk to people, regardless of where they're at this point.
Great. Now I think it's time to drop down the poll results.
Okay, do it.
We could see some of those. Here we go.
Yep.
What's your favorite metaverse style game platform? Fortnite, 33%. Oh, that's interesting. But Minecraft coming along behind.
Yep.
Blancos. My apologies. My apologies again. Is actually got a 3%. So
there you go. We got a vote there. So that's
that's still hope,
bad, especially for not being out yet. So hopefully when the game's out, we shift those numbers greatly.
Right. Yeah, there's a none of about 20%, but I mean, not everybody's getting into this stuff. I mean, and they don't need to. I mean, but there's some opportunities here that I think are really fascinating. You have to play the game to be able to enjoy some of what's happening here. How long before blockchain-based technologies are commonly used across media, gaming, and entertainment? Only 3% believe they are pretty common already. 2021, about 1 in 5 think next year. Others almost have 43%, 2 and 5 say 2 to 4 years. That feels close to right to me.
I think so. I mean, to me, what's interesting again is it depends on what level of blockchain tech, right? So you're talking about blockchain tech powering those ecosystems. I think it's very soon, right? I mean, we're coming out with a big one later this year, right? If you're talking about full-on blockchain, decentralized community governance, token-based economies, you're a little further out. I think it's just, like I said, I love the space. But if you've ever sent a transaction to somebody else and then held your breath for a minute and a half, hoping it shows up, that it's not quite consumer ready. I don't think yet. I just don't think that all the tools are quite there. So I think we're going to keep obviously experimenting with that and opening those doors and seeing what happens with it. But yeah, I think the poll's pretty close. I think that 2 to 10 years is probably probably right in terms of really heavily full blockchain and the concepts behind blockchain really, really being established.
Yeah. In a post-pandemic, 5G fueled Apple Glass wearing world, what's the opportunity for AR-based games such as Niantic's Pokemon Go and NBCU's Jurassic World Alive that map virtual experiences? The future's so bright, they got to wear shades. About almost half of you, 45%, think that it's right there. What's your take on those kinds of games that are in the real world, layering experiences on top of them?
I mean, I think there's a couple different pieces to that question. You know, even games like Pokemon Go, you can kind of separate the location-based, the geolocation-based away from the AR, and they're kind of separate experiences right now. I love them both. I think they're very cool. I also like the third combination too, which is kind of how a physical object in the real world can interact with a digital object in the game world. We did some of that at Activision with a game called Skylanders Battlecast. We had actual physical trading cards that were encoded that could actually become digital assets. So I think that's another way. I think location is very cool. I think we're just getting started on that. I think obviously Pokemon Go, I mean, they have the best brand for that. And they just did everything right. And obviously, you know, as a lot of my former teams are there, I definitely wish them the best, and I really love where they're heading with it. But I think we're just getting started with that tech, and I think the AR experiences, if you played with the HoloLens or you played with Magic Leap, they're really, really amazing as well. So eventually, if we can get that everybody into people's contact lenses or glasses or whatever, we're going to end up having it on a person. There'll definitely be very immersive experiences that come out of that.
Right. Yeah, I think 33% think it'll be complicated for a couple of years for folks, and that's probably true. But some people think it'll still be a niche experience. I think I got to tell you, I really believe that AR experiences of many kinds, not just game experiences.
Yeah.
You know, the advertising, marketing components, that opportunities are crazy as we get 5G and this bandwidth and low latency and all that are really going to be very interesting as they build those into something, maybe not Pokemon because of Nintendo's family-friendly approaches and all that, but other kinds of experiences that you know that's going to go crazy.
Yeah,
so I think we did
a demo. Sorry, real quick. We did a demo like with a McDonald's box. This is now, I mean, it's like 2014, so it's been about 6 years. So it's like early AR days with the Skylanders game because we used AR in there as well. You had the card, you put your phone over it, and the character would jump out of the card. We did I remember this one particular demo, and it was just a prototype. But we took a McDonald's box, right, a Happy Meal box, and we had all of a sudden the Happy Meal box would start catching on fire, and a character would punch his way through the box and then land next to the box. And honestly, it just, the way it plays with your mind and the way it makes your mind just want to believe that that's real. There's very few mediums that can have that type of emotion. I think VR, frankly, in a different way, VR is another one of those mediums that draws that emotion. And I think anytime you can draw emotions from players or emotions out of technology, it will eventually become a very meaningful platform, right? So I think we're there. I think we just got a while to get there. But yeah, there's going to be some really amazing things that come out of that for sure.
Interesting. I noticed that a Chicken Hawk fan who goes by the name of Anonymous Attendee, it's a Chicken Hawk, walk, says, question for David, when do you think will come first? Crypto being used as a currency replacing fiat, or Missouri making the Final Four? I would only say that we'll make the Final Four before Kansas wins the Big 12 in football. So
football? I wouldn't take that bet either. But though we have a great new coach coming, so we'll see. So.
We'll see how it works out with Les, the old gambler. And it's nice to be able to even talk about things like college sports at a time when we're not even sure. I mean, the Michigan president just said they're not sure they're going to be back in class next fall. So anyway, I think at this point we need to kick it back to Ned to promote tomorrow's conversation and everything else. Thanks so much, John. Where can people find you? Where are you available?
So I think LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and Twitter. My name is John Was Taken because I tried John and it was taken. So my name is @JohnWasTaken. But definitely hit me up there.
Who saw that coming?
Yeah, exactly. John Linden was also taken apparently, so I was a little late to the party there. But yeah, just @JohnWasTaken on Twitter or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to continue any conversations that people like to have.
And you can find me @David Bloom. I got in early, being a prudent Missouri Tiger, and at David Bloom on Twitter and at David L. Bloom on LinkedIn. So Ned, take her away, sir.
I don't even want to rain on your sports conversation, but I went to UT Law School, so you know the Longhorns.
Where'd you go undergrad? Come on, the law school doesn't count. I mean, you're just paying. That just means you pay him more money as an alum. Give me a freaking break.
Yeah. We you know, Brown University wasn't too competitive in sports.
The football team at Brown is awesome. They roll, man. They roll in the old Ivy League. Let me tell you.
Great conversation, guys. And you know, tomorrow we're going to this blockchain entertainment conversation. We have Paul Sweeting from the Rights Tech project back. And he has Stefan and Fabian from Bitfury Surround on the show tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow at noon Pacific and have a great day, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks,
guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.